Hey, how's it going? Ben here. Great to see you again. Thanks for tuning in. In this video, we're talking about teaching English in Thailand. So I've been teaching English in Thailand for maybe 3 or 4 years now. And I wanted to make this video because I think there isn't that much information out there, not on YouTube. There doesn't seem to be a great deal. And I wanted to start by giving a bit of an overview of all the different things to consider if you're planning on going to Thailand and starting a career teaching English. In this video, we're going to look at some of the documents and qualifications required for you to teach English in Thailand. We'll talk about the visas and the work permit. We'll talk about what kind of salary you can expect and what is the cost of living. And then we'll also look a little bit about the process of beginning your career as an English teacher here in Thailand. So without further ado, let's get into it. Teaching English in Thailand. So the first question you're probably going to ask yourself is, am I qualified? And we are going to look on the next page at some of the documents and qualifications you need to teach English in Thailand. So that is first up, and what we'll go over immediately, because that is kind of the most pressing matter. If you're not qualified, you can probably look to start getting qualified, and you will need most of these documents to get an English teaching job here in Thailand. Documents and qualifications. So first up is you will need a university degree. So this is a pretty open category. You need a university degree from a accredited university. It doesn't necessarily matter what field you studied. However, if you want to specialize, if you want to come to Thailand and be a maths teacher on an English program, it might be better you have a degree in mathematics. Same true if you want to come and teach sport on the English program. So it's not actually that common knowledge, but you're not limited to just teaching English. You will be teaching in English, working on an English program, meaning you will be speaking English, but you could find yourself teaching social studies, sport, and many different things. And if you want to teach one of those specialized subjects on an English program here in Thailand, then you probably would need a degree in that field. However, if you want to come and work as an English teacher, the key thing is that you will need a university degree. You will need to be educated to a university degree level. The next thing you will need is a TEFL certificate or a teaching degree. So if you are a qualified teacher, so that would mean you have studied a teaching master's or you have the teaching certificate, then you won't need the TEFL certificate. However, if you are just a university degree holder in a different subject, then you will need to get some kind of TEFL certificate. Now, TEFL is Teaching English as a Foreign Language, and that's what TEFL stands for. And you will need to study one of the many different TEFL courses and become TEFL certified before you can start teaching in Thailand. So you will need your TEFL certificate or a teaching degree on top of your university degree. Next on our list is you will need police checks. When it comes to police checks, you will probably need a background check from your home country and one from the Kingdom of Thailand. So it's worth bearing in mind if you are planning to travel to Thailand. Definitely check with your school if you need to get a police background check before you travel. I needed to do one, so I had to get a police background check in the UK, and I also had to do one in Thailand once I arrived. Don't worry about the one in Thailand too much. Your school will probably aid you once you arrive in the Kingdom of Thailand, and you can go get a police check at a local police station. Next up, you will need your working visa. So we'll go into that in a little bit more detail later, but you will need a working visa to work legally in the Kingdom of Thailand, and also a work permit. Once again, we will speak about the work permit and the work visa a little bit later on. They're not something you necessarily need to organize yourself. Your school should help you. In fact, you will need your school or your employer to help you when applying for both of these documents, but you will need them to work legally in the Kingdom of Thailand, so they are part of the list of documents and qualifications you need to teach English in Thailand. And finally, you may need the IELTS qualifications. IELTS is only necessary if you are a non-native English speaker. So if you come from a country where English isn't the official language, then you will need to get an IELTS certificate to prove that you can speak English to a high degree. And so you may need the IELTS, but obviously that's only for people not from native English speaking countries. So the next thing you're probably wondering about is how do I find work? So this next section is about finding work as an English teacher in Thailand. And we're going to go look at two different options you have. The first one is online. So websites like ajarn.com and Facebook groups like Teaching Jobs in Thailand list teaching job posts. So if you go on the website ajarn.com and look for the English teaching jobs in Thailand, you'll see a full list of different positions available of schools looking to hire directly online through websites such as ajarn.com. You can also find lots of posting for English jobs on Facebook, so that might be lesser known. But if you look for Facebook groups like English Teachers in Thailand, maybe you want to be more specific, you could say English Teachers in Bangkok, Teaching Jobs in Thailand, Teaching Jobs in Chiang Mai. There's lots and lots and lots of Facebook groups, and you may be able to find, well, I'm certain you will be able to find, because I see them a lot because I'm a member of those groups, you will be able to see job postings fairly regular on Facebook teaching jobs pages. So if you are looking for a teaching position in Thailand, I definitely recommend you go to ajarn.com, and you also browse Facebook and look for different groups in the areas you want to teach. The number two would be to look offline. So the first way I would recommend finding a job is online on those websites listed. The second way I would recommend you find work as an English teacher in Thailand is offline. So that would involve traveling to Thailand and going into schools. Maybe you don't feel comfortable about applying for work in a country you've not been to, in a region you've not been to, so maybe finding work while you're in your home country isn't for you. In that case, it's not a bad idea to actually travel to Thailand, have an explore around, try staying in Bangkok, Chiang Mai, Samui, Phuket, wherever you want to go and wherever you are curious about living. Definitely go there and have a sort of look around and see how it feels to actually spend time there. Then you could also go and look at the schools. Once again, this is a big bonus to coming to the kingdom first and then looking for a job. You get to see the schools, you get to go there, you can go in and drop off your CV, maybe make a personal contact with someone. Maybe this is a better route for you if you want to explore the area before you commit to living there. Doing this, you'll get a much better feel for the school, better feel for the location, and this may be a much better route for you. So those are the two main ways I would begin by looking for work if I was looking for work in the Kingdom of Thailand. Now, there are different types of school in Thailand. So in Thailand, like many other countries, you have a few different options when it comes to schools. So the first one is the government school. Okay, government schools can be the most restricted in terms of resources and school funding. May find the pay on the lower end of the spectrum of teacher salaries, and potentially the most freedom in terms of teaching and very emotionally rewarding. Okay, so the government schools are the cheaper of the schools in terms of sending your student to them if you're a Thai citizen. So the government schools are at the lower economical end of the school spectrum here in Thailand. However, they are very rewarding to work for, I'm sure, as you can feel like you're doing something genuinely good. I'm sure your students will be very grateful and appreciative of your time and energy spent if you're working at a government school as an English teacher here in Thailand. So that's one of the options for you, is to look at government schools. The most common school I see hiring foreign teachers are the private schools. Private schools typically very well equipped classrooms and good workbooks and resources. When it comes to private schools, you're usually offered a decent salary and benefits, and can have a high demand and time outside of classrooms, hours, and strict uniform policies. So I've personally spent the entire time of my teaching career in private schools. There are a lot of English teaching positions at private schools. Foreign teachers are in high demand when it comes to private schools, I find, here in the Kingdom of Thailand. So that's why I spent the majority of my time working at private schools. They're reasonably good, so they're kind of the mid range of schools in terms of how much you'll earn. You'll probably be earning a decent amount at a private school, but not the highest amount. You will probably find they have a lot of high demand on your time outside of classroom hours. You'll have to do many things, like you'll have to do the occasional Saturday, you'll have to do all sorts of camps and all sorts of activities. You'll have to do the occasional Saturday and that kind of thing, and they can have very strict requirements on things like uniform. So that's what I've personally found at private schools anyway. So there is one more alternative for you, and that would be the international schools. So usually offer high salary and the most benefits. International schools are usually the highest paying when it comes to teachers. So international schools will also require the most from teachers in terms of time outside the classroom and paperwork, so it has the highest demand on your work, most likely, and often have very well equipped classrooms and resources. So international schools typically are like the top tier schools in Thailand. Often they have the best equipment, offer them highest salary to teachers. International schools run on foreign curriculum as well, so often require teachers to be qualified in the country of the international school. So for example, if you work at a British international school, oftentimes you have to be qualified to teach in a British school to be eligible to apply for a job in a British international school here in Thailand, and they run the British curriculum, so you'll be studying your GCSEs, that kind of thing here in Thailand. So that's another option for you. So you have three main types of schools. You have the government schools, you have the private schools, and you have the international schools, and all of them do hire foreign teachers, so it's worth checking them out, I guess. Once you've found a job or you begin the job search, you'll probably have questions about visas and work permits. Both are required if you want to work legally in the Kingdom of Thailand. So to work legally in Thailand, you are going to need to get the correct visa and apply for a work permit. So, the working visa. The visa required to work as an English teacher in Thailand is the non-immigrant B visa, so often referred to as the working visa. The official title of the visa you need to work as an English teacher in the Kingdom of Thailand is the non-immigrant B visa. And in fact, I've actually made a video about the non-immigrant B visa or the working visa on this channel already, so I'll leave a link in the top and in the description to the video going into more detail about the working visa. So that is the visa you will need if you're going to be teaching English in Thailand. You can apply for the visa in your home country at a Thai embassy if you have found work already. If not, then travel to Thailand as a tourist and do a visa run to a neighbouring country once you find work. So there are two main routes to getting the working visa. The first route, if you're applying for work online, what you can do once you've found a job is communicate with your school, get them to send you all the documents required to apply for the working visa, then go to a Thai embassy in your home country, and with the documents sent by your school, you will be able to apply for the correct non-immigrant B working visa at the embassy, at the Thai embassy in your home country. Once that has been approved, the working visa will be put in your passport and you can travel to Thailand and enter the country on the correct passport to then start work. Now, maybe you can't communicate well with your school, maybe they won't send you all the documents you need, maybe you haven't found work yet, maybe you want to travel to Thailand and view the school first. In that case, what you will do is enter Thailand on a tourist visa, so travel around, explore the country, look for potential work, and then begin your application process. Once you've found a school you want to work with and who are wanting to employ you, you get the documents from the school once again, this time you're already in Thailand, remember? And what you have to do once you've got all the documentation is then leave Thailand. So you'll have to go to a neighboring country. Depending where you are in the country, maybe you go to Laos, maybe you go to Cambodia, maybe you go to Malaysia, but typically you would go to one of the neighboring countries of Thailand with the documentation to apply for the working visa. What you have to do is go to a Thai embassy in Laos, in Malaysia, in Cambodia, wherever it is you decided to travel to with your documentation, and apply for the working visa there. Once you've been successful and the visa has been approved and put in your passport, you can return to Thailand now on the correct working visa. That run to a neighboring country is often referred to as a visa run and is a pretty common thing to happen, especially for English teachers, because you maybe have to do it when you're changing work, maybe you have to do it when your visa runs out, whatever it is. It is actually quite a common thing to do, although it does sound very complicated, I'm sure, especially if you're not familiar with it. Once you have your visa, once you have your working visa, or the non-immigrant B visa, as it's officially known, your next step will be to begin the application process of your work permit. So like I said before, you need your visa, you need the correct visa in your passport, and you also need a work permit for you to be able to work legally in the Kingdom of Thailand. You need a work permit to work legally, as we just said, in the kingdom. And once you have found work, your school will apply for the work permit on your behalf. So you don't really need to worry too much about the work permit. Typically, your school will do all the work for you. Once you've found work and once you've been officially employed, once you've signed the contract, and all that good stuff, your school will begin the process of applying for a work permit for you. Now, as long as the application for the work permit is in the process, you're allowed to start work, I believe, and the work permit will probably take a few weeks to be processed and delivered to you. The work permit is a small passport-like book with your picture, your information, and your employment details in. And like I say, it's kind of formality. You will need this to work legally in the Kingdom of Thailand. We will quickly mention visa renewal and 90-day reporting. Once again, they may be new things for you if you haven't worked or lived in a foreign country before. So, renewing the visa for another year is simple when you are continuing to work at the same school and can be done locally at a Thai immigration office. So typically your visa will be a 1-year visa. That's what you get. Unless your contract is shorter than that, then your working visa will only cover the length of your contract. So if you've got a 6-month contract, your working visa would only be for 6 months. However, if you get the year contract, which is common, this is what a lot of the schools will require for you, is to commit to a 1-year teaching term. Then your visa will be 1 year in length. Now, that doesn't mean you have to leave at the end of that year if you're continuing to work. If the school offers you a new contract, you don't need to get a new visa. What they will do is you will renew the visa for 1 more year once again, as long as the paperwork is done and the school have offered you a new contract. I just wanted to point out to you that you won't have to do a visa run again if you're just continuing or you want to renew the visa you already have. You can do that internally in Thailand. You can do that at a local immigration office. Renew the visa for another year as long as you have all the paperwork and you have a new contract from the school. It is required that you go to immigration every 90 days and check in as an English teacher. So this is pretty common. This is pretty common practice for all the non-immigrant visa types and for many foreigners living in the Kingdom of Thailand, doing 90-day reporting. What this means is every 90 days, so roughly 3 months, you have to go to your local immigration office and check in, essentially. It's a very quick and painless process. It doesn't cost any money. When you go to do your 90-day reporting, all you do is pass your passport in, fill out a form with some information. They log it in the computer, whatever they do, and then you get a new slip in your passport with the date for your next 90-day reporting. So it's worth remembering, because if you forget and you do an overstay, then you will have to pay a fine. So you don't want to do that too much, because 90-day is free and pretty easy. You do have to travel to the immigration office, but apart from that, it's not really a big deal, but something to bear in mind, as often it is something that lots of people do forget about. Next up, let's talk about the salary and benefits. How much will I earn as an English teacher and what benefits can I expect? So, an average salary. An average salary per month teaching English in Thailand is between 30,000 Thai baht and 50,000 Thai baht. So that's $900 to around 1,500 US. Obviously, this is going to vary massively. So some of the things that varies on, like we said, was the type of school you work for. Typically, the international schools pay the most. If you're working at an international school, if you have teaching degrees from your home country, and you can work at the international schools and get a top paying job there, then you could be earning a lot more than this, all the way up to like 100,000 Thai baht per month. If you're your average English teacher out here and you're working at a private school or a government school, your wage is probably going to be much closer to 30,000 Thai baht, especially when you first start out. After that, obviously, once you've gained some experience, you can start negotiating for a higher pay. Pay varies a great deal depending on location in Thailand. So if you're in Bangkok, you're going to probably get more than you are in rural Thailand. Previous teaching experience, like we said, you're going to get more money if you've worked more in Thailand already or you've worked at a school in your home country. The type of school, once again, we've touched upon that. So that's essentially international schools pay more than private and government schools. And your qualifications, okay, so we did mention that as well. So that is a rough idea of how much you can expect to get paid working as an English teacher here in the Kingdom of Thailand. On top of your salary, we can have a look at some potential benefits to working in a school in the Kingdom of Thailand. So one is special class pay. Now, many schools offer special class. This is like an extra outside of the curriculum English class that parents may want to put their students in. You can start one with your class. For me, that has been like 4 hours per week on top of my regular teaching schedule in the school, working with a Thai assistant. And I got extra pay for that because the parents paid extra to have their students get extra English class. It is pretty common Many schools will offer like a special class program for their students and will hire the English teachers as like an extra, and you may be able to get that as an extra bonus to your salary each month. So this could be very lucrative for you as well. So it's a benefit to look for in the contract, maybe when you're speaking with the school. So all of these benefits are worth speaking with your potential employer about before you sign any contract or agree to work. Holiday pay. Now, this may come as a surprise, but not all schools offer holiday pay. Some schools will only pay you for the time worked, so you'll have like a contract where you're only paid for the months you work. You won't get paid for the holidays. I have seen that, and it's not terribly good. So make sure you ask before you're employed, ask about the holiday pay. Do I get paid holidays working at this school? Another benefit you may get is an annual completion bonus. Once again, this isn't something you would potentially expect. However, many schools do actually offer a yearly completion bonus. So if you don't have too many lates, you don't have too much time off, then you may get a bonus at the end of each year as like an annual completion bonus for your working year or for completing the contracted work you had. Next, some schools offer a housing allowance, so this is kind of more rare. However, I have once again seen it at some schools. Some schools will help you with the cost of your housing, so you may get a housing allowance. The cost of the visa and work permit. Now, this is pretty much offered by every school. In fact, it's definitely worth checking with your school and definitely worth confirming that they will cover the cost of the visa and the work permit, as they should, as it's very common practice here in Thailand. So that is another benefit of potentially working at a school, is the cost of visa and work permit being covered by your school or your employer. And another big one that is offered but not offered everywhere is health insurance. So this is definitely worth checking if your school offers health insurance. As you can imagine, health insurance is a massive expense if your school doesn't offer it. In Thailand, there's a private health service. So if your school offers health insurance, that is a massive expense you don't need to worry about. Also, it's very comforting knowing you have health insurance, and many schools will offer health insurance or part fund health insurance for their foreign teachers. So that's something worth checking with your school. I've listed all these potential benefits because they're worth checking with while you're in contact, especially if you're in early stages of agreeing to start working at a school. Maybe you can check, maybe this is what will help you decide between different schools. You may get a lot more benefits with one school, and that even may help like make up for some lower salary perhaps. So definitely worth checking with the school when you're looking for a job. Check about the different benefits of what you may get if you are employed by the school or agency. Now, we've talked about the average salary a teacher and in the Kingdom of Thailand, and you may have some questions about the cost of living. This will vary massively from person to person, as you can imagine, but I wanted to show how little expenses can be in Thailand and how far your wages may take you. So you may be taking a pay cut moving to Thailand. You may be getting paid more in your home country, but it may not matter too much because maybe the cost of living is lower and therefore you can save a similar amount. So just to give you a rough idea, I estimate my rent takes up about 15% of my salary. So it's pretty cheap. Rent is actually really cheap here in Thailand. I pay about $100 per month for a small 2-roomed house, so it's very reasonable, not expensive at all. In terms of rent, I don't think. My food and drink, so this is like eating at restaurants, day-to-day food, that does take up quite a bit. Food is fairly expensive. So for me, food and drink takes up quite a bit of my salary. I'd say about 30% of my salary monthly. And transportation, once again, is very cheap. If you have a motorcycle, if you buy a motorcycle, if you rent a motorcycle, it's very cheap to run. Gas is reasonably cheap. Motorcycles don't use much gas at all, especially if you're just nipping about the city. So for me, transportation takes up about 6% of my monthly expenses. Now, I did have an initial investment because I did buy my motorcycle, but if you're renting, I think it would still take up around 6% of your monthly salary. Okay, and that just probably leaves entertainment, so that's like going to the cinemas, doing different excursions. About 20% of my monthly salary, I'd say, does that. Now, that does leave me with a fairly significant amount. Almost 40%, 39% goes to savings. So this is a rough estimate for me, just to give you a brief idea. I do plan on making a video in the future going into more detail of the cost of living for Thailand. But I did want to point out that even though you're probably taking a pay cut moving to Thailand to teach English, you may actually not be worse off. I probably can save as much here as I could working in the UK, because the cost of living was so expensive when I was living in the UK. Whereas in Thailand, I make a lot less, but my expenses are also a lot less. So I actually have a bit of money to play with that I'm left with at the end of each month from my salary. So that is the cost of living, roughly. A bit of a brief overview of the cost of living in Thailand if you're going to be an English teacher. Working hours and holidays, let's do this briefly and worth knowing about. So your working hours. Typically, if you're employed by a school, you will be working 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, and usually that would be 8 or 9 hours per day. Now, it is a bit of a shock to some new teachers, the expectations and the working hours of the schools. It is a full-time job. You will be spending the majority of your time working in the school if you're an English teacher, obviously, if you think about it a little bit. But yeah, it still is a bit of a shock to some people. You'll probably start work around 8, you may finish around 4 or 5 p.m, so they can be quite long days. In terms of holidays, the two main holidays that you're pretty much guaranteed is the midterm holiday in October, usually 2 to 3 weeks in October in the middle of the school year, and the summer holiday around April. So you probably get a couple of months, you probably get 2 months summer holidays. Definitely remember, worth checking if you get paid holidays if you're going to be moving to Thailand, because some schools do pay holidays, some don't. So yeah, if you're thinking of planning trips, you're probably looking at the midterm holiday in October or the summer holiday at the end of term. So that will be your working hours and potential holidays working as an English teacher here in Thailand. So that does wrap up this brief overview of teaching English here in Thailand. If you have any more questions, if you think I missed anything off, if you're confused by anything I said, then please let me know in the comment section below, because I'll do my best to answer any of your questions. I have been working as an English teacher for 4 years now, 4 or 5 years, I forget. So maybe I can help you if you have some questions. If you're a new teacher and you're planning to move to Thailand, then let me know in the comment section if you have any comments or questions. Also consider subscribing, because I do plan on making more videos about teaching specifically in Thailand, and I do have a lot of other videos about living in Thailand. So consider subscribing if that interests you. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit the like button. I'd greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you next time, and I greatly appreciate it, you watching this video, especially if you made it all the way to the end. So goodbye.